And that's pretty much the way that I think about probably most boxing fans nowadays. I don't know how and I'm saying this from the perspective all the way around, regardless of who you may be a fanboy of or a hater of or what have you. Like, I don't even see people properly crafting arguments either for or against different fighters. Like, it's really astonishing to me. Like, I see people now all of a sudden saying that Vasyl Lomachenko that he needs to go all the way up to welterweight and fight Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence and unify the division in order for him to get any credit. Are you so fucking stupid that you don't seem to fucking realize that by saying shit like that, you're actually giving the guy credit? Are you that retarded? I swear to God, man. Some of these people that call into shows, some of these people that be on some of these hangouts, some of these people that may be making videos, some of these people that be on podcasts are really fucking dumbasses. Like, you guys are truly amazing. It's real. I lose a little bit more faith in humanity every time I start really listening hard to to fan perspectives on boxing. Like, I really do. I really do. It's a big part of the reason why there was a while where there are times where I kind of take hiatuses from even making videos just because I don't even want to fucking log into this account because I have different accounts, for different channels that I follow and stuff. And sometimes I just don't even I don't even want to be bothered with it. Beyond, the weekend, the day of the fight, the night of the fight, maybe the day after. A lot of times I just do not want to be bothered with this shit and with people's terrible analysis and their terrible argumentation for or against, because there's actually really a proper way that you could go about it. For a long time, a lot of people they call me a Roman Gonzalez fanboy, and whatever. But none of these people really ever took the time to actually try to hate on Gonzalez properly. Like, if I was a Gonzalez hater, I would have dissected every bit of this man's career. I would have dissected every single fight in order to try and find something there. I would have been saying he's ducking Estrada. He lost to Estrada and he's ducking him. He's ducking him. That, at least at that point, you're an educated hater. At least at that point, you're an educated fucking hater. You can say like, well, hey, he's ducking Estrada. He's not really the man at flyweight, even though he was the lineal champ. Well, Estrada is the fucking unified champ. So that's got to count for something. He fought Viloria after he fought Estrada. So, you could bring arguments like that up. You could say that, you could look at his sparring videos. There's a bunch of sparring videos of him online. You could look at sparring videos, especially for all of the Chocolatito haters that really loved and worshipped at the throne of Floyd Mayweather. In spite of the fact that Floyd Mayweather himself co-signed Gonzalez. So, I mean, make of that what you will. When Roman Gonzalez was, there's a sparring video. Matter of fact, I'll post this shit in the description of this. He's sparring against Carlos Buitrago. Carlos Buitrago is a fellow Nicaraguan fighter that's been a long-time contender at 105 pounds at strawweight, Gonzalez's initial weight class, incidentally. And he actually had a couple of fights against Knockout CP Freshmart, the current WBA champion. Lost both of them. I actually thought that he could have been given the decision in the first one. I thought that was a close fight. Second one, he just left a little bit too much to be desired, and he basically let Freshmart outwork him. But he's actually going to be fighting this coming New Year's against Hiroto Kyoguchi, Hiroto Chocolatito Kyoguchi. It's a very interesting fight. I'll cover that in another video, though, but it's a very intriguing fight, considering you have a man in Kyoguchi who has modeled himself after Gonzalez. Gonzalez's favorite fighter, his hero, his idol, etc. And then a guy that sparred with Gonzalez for many years. So that's a very intriguing matchup from that perspective in particular. So I think there's going to be some good action there, but. With Buitrago sparring against Gonzalez, there was a lot of moments where Buitrago is a fighter who fights out of if I was to lie to people and say that, like, hey, Carlos Buitrago's favorite fighters are Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker, and James Toney, and check out this video of Buitrago. Like, you'd be like, oh shit, he does. Like, those must be his favorite fighters, because he fights out of a shoulder roll, out of a Philly shell. He's looking to pull counter you. He's doing, throwing leading with the left hook, left hook to the body, left hook to the head. He'll throw check hooks. He throws kind of, pulls back, counters with the right hand, things like that. And you can even see in the sparring video, if you're, especially if you're a Mayweather lover and a Gonzalez hater, you could be like, well, shit, pound for pound, he doesn't measure up to Mayweather just based off of that, because you have a guy that's utilizing the Mayweather style, quote unquote, in order to, outbox him at times. He didn't really outbox him. There was Gonzalez was able to kind of rough. Gonzalez generally got the better of the sparring for the most part, but there was a lot of moments in there where Buitrago was able to nail Gonzalez pretty nicely. And you could very easily argue away that, like, oh, well, it's because Gonzalez is just a naturally bigger, stronger guy, because by the time this sparring occurred, Gonzalez was very active as a flyweight and would occasionally have some romps up at super flyweight as well, when it wasn't a title on the line. And Buitrago is a lifelong strawweight, lifelong 105-pounder. He's a little guy, or a very skinny guy, and he's actually just slightly taller than Gonzalez. You can actually see that in the video. But it's really amazing to me, man. Like, just people, they don't even know how to hate properly. Like I'm trying to think of some more examples, man. Like, man, you got Lomachenko, you got, man. You got people that used to hate on Nonito Donaire, and even with that, and that's actually kind of plays into the whole Rigondeaux thing. Is like, what, like, if you hate Donaire and he's overrated and he's not really pound for pound and he's a bum and he's a chump and blah blah and whoop de whoop, then how are you gonna give Rigondeaux credit for beating him? How are you gonna give Rigondeaux so much credit for just being a hype job? I mean, he's a hype job. He's supposed to be beaten, right? He's garbage. He's supposed to be taken out like yesterday's trash. He's supposed to be beaten. That's all there is to it. That's where I came from with it, and I was consistent with it. I wasn't like some of these other people where Donaire's garbage one day, and then as soon as Rigondeaux beats him, all of a sudden, oh no, Donaire was this great fighter. He was so great, amazing. And they ignored beforehand the fact that Donaire, he looked foolish as fuck against Omar Narvaez. He struggled to beat the likes of Matabua and Alfredo Vasquez, where the knockdowns pretty much salvaged him being outboxed in large stretches of those fights. When he was fighting another strawweight, Manuel Vargas. Vargas on short notice. I think it was on literally a day or two's notice. Vargas actually got the call saying that he was supposed to be on the undercard of Donaire fighting somebody else. I can't remember who the original opponent was. This is when Donaire was at 115. And Manuel Vargas was supposed to be fighting in an eliminator for a 108-pound title. So they told him, oh, well, you know what, we're scrapping your fight. You need to fill in because we have this main event. It's on cable TV. We need to fill, we'll give you some extra money and, gain as much weight as you can, so that you can come in and fight Nonito Donaire. And he freaking had a couple of meals after that, and he was able to hydrate and feed himself up to 113 pounds, and went in there against Donaire looking like freaking tiny in comparison, and was outboxing Donaire until Donaire finally realized, wait a minute, I'm fucking huge, and just started wailing power punches at this guy and was able to stop him. But it's, things like that it's funny to me. It's amusing that people in their ignorance, by not looking at not being circumspect about it, not looking at boxing as a sport holistically, they lose a lot of potential arguments they have, even just as a hater, man. Even just as a hater, Jose Tanaka is 10-0. I'm gonna make a video about this pretty soon too, but fuck it, I'll talk about it right now. Jose Tanaka is 10-0. He's a two-weight champion. He just vacated his WBO light flyweight title. If he wins, if he moves up to 112 and takes on, say, Sho Kimura, the WBO flyweight champion, and he beats Kimura, and I would expect him to beat. I think he does beat Kimura, and that's assuming Kimura beats Toshiyuki Igarashi, the former WBC flyweight champ, December 31st. But say Kimura beats Igarashi, I slightly favor him to beat him. Then Kosei Tanaka will have become a 3-weight world champion in 11 fights. 11 fights, which just happens to also be the same number of fights, at least the same number of fights according to BoxRec, same number of professional fights that Vasyl Lomachenko has, because they're not counting his World Series of Boxing fights, which technically were professional fights. So though these records that people are saying that Lomachenko is making and breaking aren't entirely legitimate. They're not entirely the truth. There's a certain narrative that's been crafted for him in that respect, along with in other regards. Whereby people they're just basically looking to toss credit onto the man, even just over the top, on top of the good performances that he's had. And he's had very good performances recently, which I think he definitely deserves credit for. But beyond that, it's just people they're crafting a narrative for him. I could keep on going, people saying that like, oh, it's crazy to me, because the thing is, like, when you're hating on a fighter and you're not giving him credit for this or that, how the hell are you going to give a fighter that you do like credit for beating that fighter? How is that supposed to happen? How exactly does that work out? How does that work out? I mean, you got to be realistic. At some point, you got to be realistic about it. You know what I mean? Even with Guillermo Rigondeaux, who I've been accused of hating on for a long time. I considered him one of the most skilled fighters, technically speaking, pound for pound. Back when he did defeat Donaire, I did rate him as a pound for pound. Yes, I did. He fell away from that because of his general inactivity. Part of it not necessarily his fault, but eventually it does become his fault. When he does leave the plantation, so to speak, of Top Rank and HBO, and he's his own man now, and there are opponents that he could have better fought as opposed to the guys that he did fight, like the legendary James Dickens and the all-time great Julian Francisco, and the Japanese legend, underground legend Hisashi Yamagasa. He was supposed to fight Shingo Wake after the Yamagasa fight. A lot of people forget that was supposed to be a 2-fight deal in Japan, but that it is what it is. You can't really change it in retrospect. And actually, Rigondeaux, I still think, is a very skilled fighter. Unlike a lot of these people that you supposedly were his big fans, that want to see him out of the sport. They don't ever want to see him again. I want to see him again, man. I want to see if guys his own size can beat him. I think that they can, and I've long thought that they could. But I want to see that actually proven. There's one thing to speculate on something. It's another thing to actually have it proven in front of you. For better or worse, I want things to be proven. For better or worse, whether they prove my projections and my analysis correct or incorrect. Ultimately, I want to see them proven. Milan Melindo, for instance, light flyweight champion, IBF light flyweight champion. I expect him to lose against Ryoichi Taguchi on December 31st. I expect Taguchi to beat him. I expected Heki Butler to beat him. I also expected Akira Yagashi to beat him. So because he knocked out Yagashi in the first round, he decisioned Butler, who himself is a very technically good fighter, a points fighter all day long, and he would have been an amazing amateur had he actually stayed as an amateur instead of turned pro when he did. And then Taguchi, if he beats Taguchi, that'll be 3 upsets in a row. So how am I not going to give the guy credit for that? I've a lot of people back when he fought Estrada said that, like, oh, he gave Estrada this good fight. I didn't see him give Estrada. I thought Estrada handled him. I thought Estrada outboxed him very handily. But in spite of that whole situation, I give Melindo his credit where it's due. I doubted him. And just because he proved me wrong, that doesn't mean that I'm going to try and discredit the wins that he got. He won them. Even though I do think that there was a good chance that Yagashi was weight drained going into that fight. He was talking about moving all the way up to 115 afterwards. He had previously been champion at 112. That was the guy that Gonzalez got his flyweight title from, but just before he made his breakout in the U.S. and or his breakout on HBO in the U.S. He had fought in the U.S. before. But Molindo deserves the credit for it, so I give it to him. He's really not my cup of tea stylistically. I don't really like the way he fights. I think that there's a lot of holes in his game and his style. I think that those holes. All you gotta do is watch the Estrada fight to see him, in full effect. I don't think that he has like the skills, the otherworldly skills of some of those other fighters down at the lower weights who I would be prone to consider pound for pound. But if he keeps beating some of these guys that I do think are technically better than him, at the end, at some point I gotta start saying, well, shit, this guy is better than I thought. He's better than he's effective at the very least. What he does may not necessarily be eye pleasing. It may not necessarily be aesthetic, but it's effective, and that's that's something that you got to give the guy credit for. If people have certain styles that they might not like, well, if they're going through the gamut and they're fighting many different styles, I'll keep using Molindo as an example. Taguchi's a volume fighter. Butler is a pot shotter, a defensive pot shotter, and Yagashi is just a high action ambush fighter. And if he's beating all of these guys, these many different styles, then what type of fighter is going to beat him? Estrada beat him, yeah, but Estrada is another guy that, he's one of the best pound for pound skilled guys out there. And Estrada, incidentally, getting back around to kind of Rigondeaux, is a fighter that I considered technically skill wise. I considered him a pound for pounder, like one of the best pound for pound, one of the best skilled fighters in the sport of boxing, period, point blank, regardless of weight class, et cetera, so on and so forth. But he, ever since his run of Valoria and Molindo and Tyson Marquez, in the recent years, he hadn't really been fighting very good opposition. He hadn't been. He had his hand injuries, yeah, sure, but if you look at the I think it was the 3 or 4 opponents before he fought Carlos Cuadras, they just weren't on his level. They were the same type of guys that Rigondeaux was fighting, really, and he was schooling them. He was a manhunt. He was beating them with ease. Am I gonna say that? Oh well, because Gonzalez is ducking him, and I'm not wrong is ducking him, and now Inoue is ducking him, and and all these other guys are ducking him. That he still deserves to be pound for pound. No, because that is unto itself speculation on my part. Only recently has he came back into the pound for pound atmosphere, as far as I'm concerned, with the victory that he has over Carlos Cuadras, because I projected him to be a pound for pounder even at super flyweight. But he had to go out there and actually prove it against Cuadras in order for him to deserve the props, in order to show that it wasn't just an eye test. It wasn't just an eye test against a completely overmatched opponent where it's like he could have chosen to fight any style against the guy. He could have done a Roy Jones impression against some of those guys and knocked him out. Done the second movie stole from a Gamecock, so to speak. But it's I just kind of made this video on a whim, basically. I was just a little bit annoyed and frustrated with some of the things that I've been hearing from people, man. Like, if you're gonna be a fanboy, okay, but at least be realistic. And if you're gonna be a hater, okay, but at least be well read and well researched, man. Like, at least do your homework. At least like, if you're gonna hate on Lomachenko, and this isn't an admittance of me, hating Lomachenko. I'm just a little bit perturbed by how people have prematurely given him more props than I feel that he deserves, or more props than I know that he deserves. I want to see him fight against Miguel Berchelt, who was his mandatory. Miguel Berchelt was his. Look it up. Miguel Berchelt was his WBO mandatory. He was actually Roman Martinez's mandatory. They signed to fight each other. Berchelt won the purse bid. His promotional company won I think it was Zanfer, won the purse bid. 2 weeks before the fight, Roman Martinez pulled out of the fight, citing an injury. Not less than a week after that injury, that quote-unquote injury, all of a sudden, who is Roman Martinez signed to fight? Vasyl Lomachenko. And then, of course, after Lomachenko starches Martinez, Vasyl Lomachenko, he don't want no parts of Nicholas Walters. He don't want no parts of Rigondeaux. Now, these two guys that people built up, and yet they forgot about Miguel Berchelt, who was his mandatory, enabled. They're enablers. A lot of these guys that hate on Lomachenko right now are enablers. Ultimately, Lomachenko fans should be thanking these guys because that gave Lomachenko, top-ranked Bob Arum and the WBO the right to put the middle finger up and say, fuck you, Miguel Berchelt. You haven't earned a goddamn thing. Fuck yourself. Just because you're the mandatory doesn't mean shit. And so then Miguel Berchelt had to go over and fight Francisco Vargas. Vargas, who actually drew against Alito. He didn't get schooled by him. And that's how he wound up winning his title. And not only that, but Miguel Berchelt also destroyed Jonathan Pereira Pino in 4 rounds. Sent him out on a stretcher and probably retired him because Pereira Pino hasn't fought since then. And that was going on a year and a half or maybe even longer ago. And that was the Thai fighter that Lomachenko claims that he hurt his hand against. Broke his hand or hurt it or bruised it or jammed his pinky or whatever he did against him. Berchelt hurt his hand against Takashi Miura, but I don't see where Berchelt's pound for pound ranking is for beating Miura with a broken hand. There is actual evidence of him fracturing it, making Francisco Vargas look like a shot fighter. People were even scared for Vargas's health, thinking that Steven Smith might be able to do something to him, and it turned out that Vargas ripped the man's ear off instead. And of course, finished the job that Lomachenko really, frankly, should have against Pereira Pino, but nope, no, the hype train, the hope train, against Rigondeaux, or against Lomachenko, both against and for Lomachenko, just keeps chugging along, and these people just on both sides of this argument just don't seem to be getting any brighter. It's really amazing to me. But at the very least, the fans of Lomachenko can say that they keep on racking up wins because Lomachenko's haters, by being complete fucking morons, are enabling his behavior. They're saying that he needs to go up and unify at welterweight. Crazy shit like this. You're giving the man more credit than really should be hoisted upon him, man. Are you serious? Terrence Crawford? Oh my God. Fuck yourself. If he doesn't fight Berchelt, if he chooses to do not unlike Pacquiao did when he was at 130 and not fight the likes of Juan Guzman and Humberto Soto, or at 135 when he didn't fight the likes of Juan Baby Bull Diaz and Nate Campbell and Joel Casamayor, and instead picked on the weakest champion, who was David Diaz, then Lomachenko deserves his criticism. He deserves, of course, due credit when he's beating these guys. You do deserve credit for beating opponents in general, and you deserve credit for beating opponents based on how good they are. That determines really the amount of credit that you should get, as well as based on how good you beat them. I really wonder, I really wonder about some of these people, man. I really wonder about some of these guys that say that they follow boxing, because it really just, it really just seems like they don't, and it's long been a suspicion of mine that they don't. They really don't, they follow who's been fed to them. That's exactly, it's funny because a lot of these guys are the same guys that complain about cherry picking, but they cherry pick their information. They cherry pick what's fed to them. They don't do any research. They want to talk like their authority is on a given subject, but they don't. know anything about it. They really don't know anything beyond the surface level about it. They don't know anything beyond what some of these big YouTube channels and are giving them, are handing over to them. Which is why I guess for instance, Shakur Stevenson was the only guy expected to do any fucking thing in the Olympics this past year from the United States team, and yet. Nico Hernandez is the man that actually broke the Olympic medal drought for the United States. He did it before Stevenson did. He only got a bronze. He didn't get a silver like Stevenson did. But still, the overall lack of reporting seems a little bit coincidental to me. But even beyond that, Carlos Balderas getting robbed, Gary Antoine Russell. Getting robbed. Yeah, I'll say it, getting robbed. Who was the other guy? I'm blanking on his name. The guy that fought at middleweight. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He got, he didn't get a good decision going for him. But no, yeah, they're not reported on. They're not reported on because they're not. Oh, they're not the sizzling names, and they're not the story that people want to put out there. They claim that they're these experts, and they're putting out the entire world out there for you, all the stories that matter, all the opinions that matter, all of the analysis that matters, but yet they leave gigantic gaping holes and gaps in what they actually report to you. And to me, that's doing a major disservice, especially if they're claiming that this is their job, or at least if their channels are proclaiming, their channels and their podcasts and their articles are proclaiming that this is what they do for a living. Well, I mean, if in most jobs, if you don't do your proper research, if an Apple developer all of a sudden lets out a leak about a new app or a new change coming in iOS or something, there's a good chance that, and they didn't do their homework about how such leaks security-wise could happen. There's a good chance that they're going to get reprimanded and or fired for that. But it's not the way it goes in when it comes to this boxing analysis shit. And I mean, ultimately, I can't. Maybe I can't expect that much on pointedness, but I have pretty high standards, frankly, and I think more people should have high standards. It's low standards that are the reason why, for instance, movies in Hollywood are stale as fuck, and they're rebooting every damn thing. It's low standards as to why hip hop music isn't as good as it once was back in the 90s. It's low standards as to why. Actually, several different genres of music aren't as good as they once were, at least, or so I'm told by a lot of fans of these other genres, because I primarily listen to hip-hop. But, I mean, I can even see where they're coming from with regards to, things like metal and R&B and things of that sort, even pop. But yeah, I mean, I'm rambling here. This is a very long video. Props to all of you that decided to sit through it. Maybe a little bit dry in the end, considering how it started, but it just felt like ranting. So that's all there is to it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.